All right, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you back to America Talks Live, and let's welcome in the panel because we have a lot to talk about, including the breaking news out of Massachusetts. Kurt Schlichter, trial lawyer, author, senior columnist at townhall.com, retired U.S. Army colonel and author of People's Republic, and Niger Kurt, civil rights leader, chairman of TeaPartyForward.com. Gentlemen, welcome. I can't even believe I'm saying this. Wait a minute, I'll get it. No, kidding. I can't even believe.
It's for you, Niger.
I can't even believe I'm saying this, but this just broke from the Supreme Judicial Court in Massachusetts. They've ruled unanimously that a black male in Boston, when approached by the police, quote, might just as easily be motivated by desire to avoid the recurring indignity of being racially profiled as by the desire to hide criminal activity. So they say that just because a black suspect flees police doesn't necessarily signify guilt. But what I see here is they're basically giving a green light for a black male to run from the cops because of the recurring indignity, as they put it, of being profiled. I mean, Kurt, this is insane.
Well, look, speaking as a lawyer, this is, what's the technical term? Nuts. It's also condescending and disgusting that these limousine liberals would have such low expectations of black Americans that they would put out some sort of decision like this clothed as law. It's ridiculous. It's embarrassing. I'm not often embarrassed as a lawyer, but boy, you know, I thought I had no shame gene. And then I see lawyers come out with this nonsense. It's disgraceful.
What about it, Niger?
You can be sure that these judges that sit on the bench are part of the progressive elites that probably live in the Harvards and the Cambridges and all the elite powers of the universe, and from on high of their intellectual plateau are making decisions for the little peasants in society. Unfortunately, us regular people have to deal with the results of their progressive policies, and what they're doing in actuality is putting black lives and other lives in danger as they're making the pathway a lot easier for criminals.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And here's the problem. Here's the problem. This is what we are going to see go all the way up, maybe to the Supreme Court. And if Hillary is president, and if Hillary has one or two or three appointees to the Supreme Court, they'll say, of course, this doesn't, they'll say this, Kurt, they'll say this doesn't even go far enough to protect blacks from the big, bad, evil cops.
Well, look, black Americans, like all Americans, want safe communities. They want to be protected by the police. They want to be able to walk to church or to the store. They want their kids to play outside. Limousine liberals like these Massachusetts judges do nothing to help people. They just pose and posture so they can get kudos at their cocktail parties. It is a disgrace. It's a disaster. And even worse, it's causing the death of American citizens.
Absolutely.
Because they are not stamping out the violent crime that needs to be stamped out so people can live decent lives. I'm embarrassed.
Absolutely. Niger, you know very well, it went under David Dinkins. There were 2,000 people murdered every year in New York City, maybe 90% or more minorities. Rudy Giuliani comes in, he institutes, this broken glass policing, cracking down on the most minor crimes and stop and frisk. And all of a sudden, you got it cut in a quarter. And these are minority lives, thousands of minority lives saved. And now they all say, it was all racist. It was all unconstitutional. Don't ever say racial. Don't ever say stop and frisk again, as Donald Trump is suggesting in Chicago. And who's going to suffer? But the inner city and the blacks who are going to get killed.
And you know what, guys? Who knows this fundamentally are black American citizens themselves. You know, Dr. Alveda King, who's been on your show before, and I went out to Ferguson in the height of the Ferguson riots and protests, and a poll was taken by Gallup, and it asked the question, do you believe that there are enough police in your community, there are too many police in your community, or that there are not enough police, meaning you want more police in your community? Do you know that even during the height of the riots in Ferguson, black Americans said by an order of nearly 4-1 that they actually wanted more police in their community. And when you combine those who were comfortable with the number of police in their community and wanted more, it was 90% to less than 10% that wanted less police engagement in the community. We know we're the victims of violent crime. We're the victims of robbing. We're the victims of just trying to go to the grocery store or take our kids to school or just trying to get a job. We know that we are the ones that suffer from out of control criminality more than anybody else. So we want police engagement. We know that blue lives matter because they protect black lives.
Well, Kurt, yeah, go ahead, Kurt.
Niger, I've got to agree with you there. When I was on the streets with the Army during the Los Angeles riots, I was in South Central. And you would think if you watch the media that the people would be hating on us. And man, they were hugging us. They were bringing us food. They were thanking us. And I said, why are you so happy that there are a bunch of armed soldiers here? Because my kid can go across the street and play in that park. And until you came here, he couldn't go outside. That's the truth. That's the reality.
Well, then, Niger, let me ask you this, and this is an age-old question between you, me, and your dad, and African Americans who, you know, don't accept the garbage of the media and the narrative put forth by the media and the Al Sharptons of the world. Then why, and maybe it will this time, but why then doesn't it translate at the polls? Why doesn't it translate into votes? Why won't Donald Trump saying what he's saying and America seeing what they're seeing in Charlotte? Why won't it translate into blacks saying, look, we need something different. We need a man who respects the police. We don't need a woman here who brings Michael Brown's mother to speak at her convention.
Well, that's exactly right. And Steve, I do believe you're going to see a platonic shift in the black vote. And again, unfortunately, we're not talking 55 or 60% voting for Donald Trump. We're just talking 10 to 15% of the black vote. But with that is going to be akin to a political Berlin Wall falling in black America. And you're going to start to see a dramatic change. You're going to start to see, for the first time in probably 40 years, a real competition for black votes, a real ideological contest in terms of the destiny of black people.
Kurt, let me ask you about the charging of the police officer in the Betty Shelby charged with manslaughter in the terrorist Crutcher shooting. And I want to point out earlier in the show there was a report that Miranda Khan did, which I just have to say I wasn't able to say it then for various reasons, but I disagree. Say what you will about the case, he was not shot. From everything I've seen, and I've had experts agree with me on the air on this point, he was not shot with his hands up. He was at the car, and his hands were down at that point. They were not up. They were up all along, but they were not up as far as I could see. I want to make this point when he was shot, as I alluded to yesterday when we talked about this as well. So, Kurt, are you surprised that they indicted her basically for manslaughter already?
Well, I'm not surprised. Look, this is an unclear situation. I don't pretend to know the answer. But, we have a process where we can go through and the state will provide evidence and attempt to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. And the accused is going to have a chance to present evidence. And I'm a trial lawyer. I believe in juries. I believe that 12 Americans picked at random will almost always come to the right decision in the end, unless they rule against my client. And I have faith in it. I feel bad for the family of the dead man. I feel concern and compassion for the police officer. And I always try and give the benefit of the doubt to a police officer. But, if you're a government employee and you take a life, you owe an explanation. You need to explain. Doesn't mean we're out to crucify you. Doesn't mean we're on a witch hunt. But I want to know why the government has taken a life. And we have a process that's going to do that. And I want to see what the evidence is.
Niger, what's your take on the Tulsa shooting?
Look, you don't want to rush to judgment. I mean, there is a process that has to take place. She has been indicted. I think that was a courageous act on the part of I suppose it was the state prosecutor that indicted her for manslaughter in the first degree. We'll see what the judge and jury decide. I just from a spectator's perspective, not knowing all the facts, just looking from the outside in, it does look a little disturbing that when she had a colleague, a male colleague, that shot the
taser.
With the taser, exactly, with the taser, it seemed that there was no compelling reason
Right.
For her to take his life.
Well, she reportedly, the report that I heard, that cop allegedly said or told investigators that if he had his gun pulled, he would have fired the gun at that time too. But that remains to be seen. Gentlemen, Kurt, Niger, great stuff, and thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
All right, folks, up next, give me 5. Did you see Benjamin Netanyahu at the United Nations yesterday? Oh man, if only he were in charge. Wait and see.